Every morning, the same woman looked her in the eye and said,
People like you should be grateful just to be here.
she said it for 35 days straight. Every insult, she wrote it down. What she didn't know, the woman serving her coffee owned the entire company. And this wasn't an accident. It was a test. The folder landed on the desk like it weighed more than paper should. 12 pages, 31 names. Director Che sat across from Malyuna and didn't say anything at first. She just watched. That was the thing about Che. She always gave you a moment to feel the weight before she explained it. Financial irregularities across 3 departments, she finally said. HR complaints that were filed and then just vanished. Behavioral patterns going back 2 years. I've had my team on this for 6 weeks. She paused. We have enough. The board will back you. Malyuna picked the folder up, opened it, read the first page slowly, closed it. Not yet. Che blinked. I'm sorry? I said not yet. Malyuna, this took 6 weeks to... I know how long it took. She set the folder down flat on the desk, like she was putting something to rest. If we act on this right now, we get 19 people on paper. Maybe. Half of them will contest it. Half of those will win on technicalities. And in 5 years, there will be 25 new names on a new list because we fixed the names and not the thing underneath the names. Chase stared at her. So what do you want to do? Malyuna was quiet for a moment. I want to know who they actually are, she said. Not who they are in a meeting. Not who they are when someone with authority is watching. Who they are when they think nobody who matters is looking. That's the only version of a person that's real. She looked at the folder. Give me 3 days to set something up. Che opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You want to give them a chance. I want to give them a rope, Malyuna said quietly, and I want to see what each one of them does with it. 3 days later, a new barista showed up for her first shift in the executive café on the 42nd floor. Her name tag said, Mali. The café was small, warm-lit, positioned at the exact center of the executive floor. Every senior employee walked through it every morning. It was the one space in the building too casual for performance, too habitual for anyone to stay guarded. People said things there they would never say in a meeting. They ordered coffee and dropped their professional faces for 90 seconds and became whoever they actually were when nobody important was watching. Malyuna had designed it that way when she built the floor 7 years ago. She had always known it would be useful. She just hadn't known until now exactly how. Only 2 people knew what was happening, Director Che and a single technical operative managing the secure footage archive in a locked basement room 3 floors below. No assistants, no board liaison, no paper trail that could move. On her first morning, Malyuna stood behind the counter, tied the apron, and looked at the door. She waited. She came on day 2. Yunari. She walked in, the way people walk into rooms they own. Not because she owned this one, but because she had spent so long moving through spaces on the assumption of her own welcome that it had stopped being a performance and become just the way her body worked. She was beautiful in that precise, assembled way that takes 2 hours to look effortless. She had a phone in one hand and a comment already forming in her mouth before she reached the counter. She didn't look up. Medium dark roast, no foam, and hand it to me with the logo facing out. That shouldn't need to be said every time. Molly made the coffee, handed it over, logo facing out. Yunari took it, still didn't look up, walked away. Malyuna watched her go. She opened the small notebook she kept under the counter. She wrote the date, the time, and 3 words. She did not close the file. What she hadn't expected was Brajin. He showed up on day 4 earlier than anyone else, before the morning rush had started. He ordered simply, black coffee, nothing complicated. He said, please. He waited without checking his phone, which in this building was practically unusual enough to flag. When Molly handed him his cup, he looked at her directly. Not through her, at her. Thank you, he said. First week? Yeah. He nodded slowly, like he was filing something away. It's quieter before 8. If you get a choice about when to come in, he picked up his coffee. Good luck. He left. No performance, no audience, just a man who apparently didn't know how to be rude to someone handing him coffee. Malyuna stood at the counter after he was gone. She was aware of something shifting in her thinking. Not dramatically, just a small recalibration. The audit had flagged him for proximity. Contracts routed through his office, family interests on the outside, a trail that led to people around him and never quite to him directly. The question wasn't whether he was connected. The question was whether he knew. She pulled his file that evening. Read it again. Found nothing new. She left his name on a separate page, by itself, with no notation. Week 2 changed the temperature of everything. Yunari had discovered something. The café, she had realized, was a stage, and she had an audience. A loose cluster of mid-level executives had started arriving together in the mornings, gathering near the window side, timing their orders to coincide with hers. They had figured out, in the wordless social mathematics of offices, that something entertaining happened every morning at the counter. They arrived expecting it. She delivered. You know what I think? Yunari said one morning, loudly enough to carry, not looking at Molly, but making sure her voice did. Some people spend their whole careers in rooms like this and never figure out they're not actually part of anything. They're just background. Someone laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one. Molly handed someone else their order without expression. Malyuna wrote it down. By the end of week 2, Yunari had a nickname for Molly that had spread through 3 departments. Malyuna wrote that down too. Then she started writing the names of the people who used it, the ones who hadn't been on the original list, the ones who were volunteering themselves. Every evening from a rented apartment across the city, she called Director Che. Day 11, Che read back. 6 flagged incidents, Yunari primary, 3 secondary participants. 1 who was present and left early, no participation. Flag the 3. Hold on the 1 who left. What about Wu? Watched, didn't laugh, ordered his coffee, left on time. Keep him open. Malyuna. Che paused. How are you holding up? Silence on the line. I keep crossing names off, Malyuna said. That part is harder than I thought it would be. Crossing them off should be easy. That's a good thing. Yeah, she said. I know. That's not the part that's hard. She ended the call. She opened her notebook. She looked at a name she had circled 3 times and not been able to act on in any direction. She closed the notebook. By day 12, Brajin had become a morning fixture. He always arrived early. He always sat at the counter instead of taking his order to a table. And he always, slowly, unpredictably, started talking. Not about work. About real things, the kind of things people only say when they've stopped calculating the cost. My father built this company from nothing, he said one morning, both hands around his cup. Like genuinely nothing. One office, 2 employees. He spent 20 years making it something. And somewhere in those 20 years, he made choices that I don't know how to inherit those choices without inheriting what they meant. You know what I mean? Molly wiped the counter. What kind of choices? The kind that worked, he said. That's the thing. They worked. That's why I can't just... He stopped, looked at his cup. Never mind. I'm talking too much. You're not. He looked at her sideways. You're very easy to talk to, he said. I don't say that to a lot of people. Actually, I don't think I've said that to anyone in a long time. Malyuna kept wiping the counter. She kept her face neutral, but something in her chest was doing something she hadn't asked it to do. She pulled his file again that night, 3rd time, found nothing, closed it, left his name on that separate page. Day 17. An HR director named Seong, on the original list, flagged for signing off on the withdrawal of 4 separate complaints, stood 5 feet from the counter and watched Yunari run her morning performance. His face went through something. Malyuna watched it happen. He saw it. He felt it. Something in him understood that what was happening in front of him was wrong. He looked at the floor. He took his coffee. He went back to his desk. Malyuna wrote his name in a 3rd column she had started. Not the main list, not the crossed off list. The column for people who knew and chose the floor. She stared at that column for a long time before she closed the notebook. There were 6 names in it. None of them had done what Yunari had done. But none of them had done the other thing either. And somewhere in the space between those 2 things was a question she didn't have a clean answer to yet. Day 18. Brajan came in and didn't order right away. He sat at the counter and turned his cup around in his hands like he was working something out. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Do you ever... He stopped. Started again. Do you ever feel like you're in a situation that you didn't choose, but you're still responsible for anyway? Like you didn't build the room, but you're the one standing in it, and so somehow it's yours? Molly looked at him. Every day, she said. He let out a slow breath. Yunari and I... He stopped. His jaw tightened. We've been connected a long time. It's not what people think it is. It's not what it looks like. But I've let it look like something because it was easier than having the conversation. And He shook his head. You were supposed to. Never mind. I was supposed to what? He looked at her. For a second, his face was entirely unguarded. Just a person. No performance. No calculation. I was going to say you were supposed to just make coffee, he said. But that's not what I meant. Long pause. I think I know what you meant, Molly said. He looked away. I shouldn't be talking to you like this. You keep saying that. I keep meaning it less, he said quietly. Malyuna stood at the counter after he left and didn't move for a full minute. Week 3, Tuesday. It was the worst morning yet. Yunari arrived with her full audience. She was performing at a pitch she hadn't reached before. Louder, sharper, more specific. The comment she made was so targeted, so deliberately personal, that the café went silent for 3 full seconds. Not politely silent, sharply silent. The kind of silence that happens when a room collectively realizes something has crossed a line. Everyone felt it. Nobody moved. Executive Director Wu was standing 4 feet away with his coffee. 22 years with the company. The most senior person on the floor. He looked at Yunari. He looked at Molly. He set his cup down. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a pre-printed HR complaint form. He had been carrying it for 3 weeks. He kept meaning to file one. He kept putting it off. Today, he didn't put it off. He filled it out by hand, at the counter, in front of everyone. His writing was slow and deliberate. He signed his name at the bottom. He handed it to Molly. "I'll be a witness," he said quietly. "My name and extension are on the form." He picked up his coffee, went back to his office. No speech, no dramatic moment. Just a man who had spent 3 weeks calculating the cost and finally decided the cost didn't matter. The room didn't applaud. Nothing cinematic happened, but 2 executives exchanged a look across the café. One of them left without finishing her order. That night, Malyuna crossed Wu's name off the list. She wrote next to it, in small letters, "Courage is not the absence of calculation. It's doing the right thing anyway, after you've finished calculating." That line stayed with me, because if we're being honest, most of us have had a moment like that. A moment when we knew the right thing to do. A moment when speaking up would have cost us something. Maybe you found the courage. Maybe you didn't. But chances are, you still remember it. If this story is bringing a memory to mind, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Sometimes sharing our experiences reminds someone else that they're not alone. And if stories about kindness, courage, and the choices that define who we are speak to your heart, please subscribe and join our community. Now, there was also Sua. She was a file clerk, not on any list. No one had flagged her. No one was watching her. No one expected her to do anything. Starting in week 2, she began taking her lunch break at the counter seat closest to Molly every single day. She brought a container of food from home and sat there and ate it quietly. And sometimes they talked and sometimes they didn't. And she just was there, present, unhurried. She didn't intervene in anything. She didn't file anything. She just refused to be absent. The executives in Yunari's circle noticed. There were comments, small ones, aimed sideways. Sua showed up the next day anyway, and the day after that. On day 29, Malyuna asked her quietly why she kept coming. Sua was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't know. I just kept thinking. If I were the one behind that counter, I'd want someone to be there. That's all." Malyuna nodded slowly, wrote nothing down. Some things didn't need to be documented. Day 32. Director Che called with a problem. "Board member Park," she said. "He's on the list. Not peripherally, directly connected. His signature is on 2 of the buried complaint withdrawals. If he's in the room when you present, he'll frame this as a personal vendetta. He has allies. He's been there 12 years. Malyuna didn't hesitate. He won't be in the room for part 2. Have legal prepare a separate letter. He reads it privately before the meeting, with his counsel present. He's asked to step out before the footage rolls. He'll contest it. He can contest whatever he wants, but he won't be able to say he didn't know. That's what the letter's for." Pause on the line. "You've been planning this specific part for a while," Che said. "I've been planning every part," Malyuna said. "That's what 32 days gives you." The last morning. Malyuna arrived before anyone else. She tied the apron for the last time. She stood behind the counter and looked at the empty café. The good light, the sound of the machine warming up, the seat where Sua ate her lunch every day, the spot on the counter where Wu had pressed his pen to a form and changed the temperature of a room. 35 days. The list of 31 had become 12. People quietly crossed off, given back to themselves without ceremony, without announcement. 12 names. 19 remained. Yunari arrived at her usual time. She had her usual audience. She said the usual thing. Bored, automatic, not even bothering to perform it anymore because it had become just the way she moved through the morning. She said something dismissive. She waved a hand. She reached for her cup. Molly handed it to her, logo facing out. She looked at Yunari directly. "Enjoy your coffee," she said. Yunari didn't even blink. She turned and walked away. Malyuna watched her go. Then she untied the apron. Slowly, she folded it into a neat square and set it on the counter. She walked to the elevator. She pressed 45. The boardroom. 12 people seated around a long table. Director Che standing near the screen. The report landed in front of each board member simultaneously. 12 pages. 5 weeks of corroborating data. HR complaint chains reconstructed in full. Financial irregularities mapped to dates and approval signatures. A 2-year behavioral record that had been buried so many times and so cleanly that some of them were only now reading it, understanding how long it had been happening. One board member recognized his own signature on a complaint withdrawal form. His face went through 3 expressions in 4 seconds and settled on something that was trying very hard to look neutral. "Before we proceed to part 2, Che said, "we'd ask Director Park to step outside. His counsel has been briefed separately." The room went still. Park stood. His chair scraped. He looked at Che. He looked at the table. He did not look at anyone else. He walked to the door. He didn't argue. The letter in his jacket pocket had already told him the shape of what was coming. The door closed. 11 people. 1 screen. "Part 2, Che said. "No music, no narration, just footage. 35 days, edited into 12 minutes. The board watched in silence. Day 2, the casual dismissal, the hand that didn't look up. Day 9, the nickname, said loudly enough to carry, received with a laugh that had learned to perform on cue. Day 17, the full audience. The comment that made the room go quiet, a man looking at the floor and choosing it. Day 21, Sua, sitting at the counter with her lunch, present and unhurried while the executive table behind her ran its daily theater. Day 26, Wu at the counter, briefcase open, pen moving in steady, deliberate lines, handing a form to the woman on the other side, and Brajan, in much of the footage, arriving early, sitting at the counter, never once participating in what was happening 3 feet behind him, not looking away from it to perform discomfort, not joining in to perform belonging. Just not there, absent from it entirely, while being physically present. The board could see all of it. The footage ended. The room was silent for 4 full seconds. The door opened. Malyuna walked in. She was still wearing the apron. She took the head of the table without explaining it herself. She didn't explain the apron. She didn't explain the 35 days. The footage had done that. The folder had done that. There was nothing left that needed introduction. She opened the file. She read names, each one with specific grounds. Clear, professional, documented language for things that had been anything but professional. The board members who had watched the footage did not argue. there was nothing to argue with. The evidence wasn't something you could reframe. She moved through the list methodically. She reached Yunari's name. She paused. She looked at Brajan, who was sitting 3 seats down. He hadn't moved since she walked in. His hands were flat on the table. His face was still. "Yunari Seo," Malyuna said. Her voice was even. "Sustained campaign of targeted harassment, systematic suppression of formal complaints over a period of 2 years, creation and deliberate cultivation of a hostile work environment. All company-connected contracts and executive partner status terminated, effective immediately." The room was silent. Brajan looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at the table in front of him. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out his company visitor's badge and set it on the table. It made a small sound. "I'll be resigning from the advisory role," he said. His voice was calm. No drama. No performance. "Same effective date. I'll be in touch separately about the contract questions the audit raised." He did not look at the empty chair where Yunari's name had just been said aloud. He did not explain himself further. He just closed the door on something he had been standing in front of for a long time and hadn't been able to open until now. After the meeting, a smaller room. Sua walked in and looked immediately like she was in the wrong place. She looked at the table, the chairs, the people, and then at Malyuna, and her face said, "I just ate my lunch at a counter. Why am I here?" Malyuna told her about the reassignment reversal, the new position, not Molly's old role, but a real one, built to fit what the company had watched her do for 5 weeks, without being asked, without recognition, without anyone telling her to. Sua looked at the apron Malyuna had set on the table beside her. "I didn't do anything," Sua said. "I just sat there. That doesn't deserve. You showed up every single day when it cost you something to be there," Malyuna said. "You didn't file anything. You didn't confront anyone. You just refused to be absent. Do you know how many people on this floor made a different choice?" Sua was quiet. "I just kept thinking," she said slowly. "If I were the one behind that counter, I'd want someone to be there." "I know," Malyuna said. "I was." Executive Director Wu shook her hand briefly and looked at her the way someone looks at a person they've just realized they've been talking to without knowing who they were. "I carried that form for 3 weeks," he said. "You filled it out. I should have done it on day 1. "Maybe," Malyuna said. "But you did it on day 21, in front of everyone. That's not nothing. That's actually a lot." He nodded once. Nothing more needed to be said. They both knew it. Late evening. The building had emptied. Every floor quiet. Malyuna was in the café. She hadn't planned to stay. She just hadn't been able to leave. She stood behind the counter with the lights low and the machine off, and the folded apron in front of her. And she looked at the room she had designed 7 years ago and turned into something else for 35 days. And she tried to figure out what she was feeling. She heard footsteps. Brajan appeared in the doorway. He stood there for a moment, like he wasn't sure he had the right to come in. Then he came in. He sat at the counter. The same seat. Same cup in his hands, except it was empty. Neither of them said anything for a long time. "I want to be angry at you," he said finally. "I've been trying to figure out if I'm allowed." "You're allowed." "I keep going back to," he stopped, "all those conversations, all those mornings, were any of it?" He couldn't finish it. "All of it," she said. I wasn't running a test on you after week 1. I was just talking to you. That was real. I didn't write any of it down. He absorbed that. His hands moved on the empty cup. Then why didn't you tell me? She looked at him. Because the only time in I don't know how long that someone has talked to me without performing something, without wanting something from it, was in this cafe, in this apron, on this side of the counter. She paused. I wasn't ready to end that, even when I knew I should. He shook his head. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I know. Long silence. What were you actually looking for? He said. When you started this. The real answer. She thought about it. The real answer. Not the professional one. I needed to know what people do in the moment when they think the answer doesn't matter, she said. When they think the person in front of them has nothing. No power, no recourse, no ability to change anything about their lives. That moment is the only time you ever see someone's actual character. Not the professional version, not the public one, the one that's left when everything else has been taken away. She paused. Power doesn't reveal you, she said. Taking power away from someone else, or believing you have, that reveals you. Every person in this building had that moment. And every person in this building showed me exactly who they are. The room was quiet. Who am I? He said. She looked at him across the counter. The same counter. The same low light. She thought about 35 mornings. About the way his shoulders came down when he stopped choosing his words carefully. About a man who set a badge on a table and didn't explain himself because the explanation was already in the gesture. You're the person who came back to the only place where you didn't have to perform, she said. That's a start. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached across the counter and set his empty cup down in front of her, like an offering, or a question, or maybe both. She looked at the cup. She looked at him. She didn't answer. And after the screen fades, after Yunari is gone, after the boardroom empties, after the apron is folded and the footage is archived, and the 31 names have been reduced to 12, and then to none, the question that stays is not about justice. It's about the counter, about who you become when you think no one who matters is watching, about whether the person you are in that moment, the version of yourself that exists when the audience disappears, is someone you would choose to be. Not the professional version, not the public one, the real one. The one that was there all along. As this story comes to an end, I keep thinking about one simple question. If you had been standing in that cafe, who would you have been? The person who spoke up? The person who looked away? Or the person who quietly sat beside someone so they wouldn't feel alone? Life gives us those moments more often than we realize. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness become the things people remember forever. If this story meant something to you, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd truly love to hear your perspective. And if stories about courage, kindness, second chances, and the strength of ordinary people speak to your heart, subscribe and join our family here. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, someone's hardest day can be made a little easier simply because you chose to care.